Please join me in the prayer for illumination. Holy God, in the glistening brightness of your presence, we turn our attention to your teaching, fully attuned to what you want to say to us. In the light of the gospel, so illuminate us that we receive your blessing in Jesus' name. Amen. Hear now a reading from the gospel according to Mark. Hear the word of the Lord. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could reach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. And then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him. Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen, until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Some of the questions were silly, like, if you could be any kind of salad dressing, what would you be?
I don't think that was actually one of them, but you get the point. Some were more informational, to get to know one another better, like, what's your favorite place in the world and why?
And then others were more profound. What are the things that scare you the most?
Now this year, we've been starting the deacons' meetings by going around the table and naming all of our highs and lows since we were last gathered together. This is an exercise probably more familiar to our children and youth from camp or retreats. But I know a few families who do something similar when they sit down to share an evening meal.
For this morning's purposes, we want to think of those highs as times when we were up at the top of the mountain, and the lows as being down in the valley. All of us have had those mountaintop experiences, and even though we have never physically climbed a mountain with Jesus, we want to suggest that we still have those moments in common with the disciples.
Sometimes it's easier to think about being down in the valley than to think of having any mountaintop experience. For some reason, it seems we feel more comfortable sharing the difficult times in our lives more easily than the good times, even to the point where we sometimes make it a contest as to whose valley is actually the deepest. But then it's also true that it is the difficult and arduous trek up from those deepest valleys that leads us to the highest mountaintops.
If you walk up a steep hill or mountain, you are taxed and tested. But at the end of the climb, you look down on a scenic river or luscious woods or a beautiful meadow that stays with you in your heart. I can think of so many different times along the Superior hiking trail where after the most challenging, rocky, and muddy climbs, we would finally get to the top and the trees would clear to provide the most breathtaking views of the lake and the Superior National Forest. And I would be overcome with awe and happiness.
With your thoughts on the peak, you endure much to get there. An unexpected off-season snowstorm, or treacherous river crossings, scaling steep, slippery slopes with too much weight carried on your back. It's far easier to push yourself to complete the journey with a companion than all alone.
But sometimes when you reach the top, what you see is not what you were looking for. Surprise! The view is less than spectacular, or you can see that off in the distance there are storms brewing.
Now life is like a mountain, hard, demanding, and steep. When you finally reach the peak, life rewards you with a view, whether it be an insight or a moral, a memory, or a physical or spiritual improvement. The work of our Board of Deacons is like a series of mountaintop experiences.
Going to visit our members who can no longer come to church for a variety of reasons is a mountaintop experience. Even if sometimes the person you are visiting doesn't remember you from one visit to the next. Being able to bring the church to them, to tell them everything that is going on, and at the same time being able to learn about them, listen to the stories of their lives, and discover the ways they have contributed to the life and ministry of this place over the years. You get really close to some people. You feel God's presence in a powerful way. And then comes the time when you have to say goodbye. The moment is full of mixed feelings as you realize this experience is about to come to an end. And yet it also makes you appreciate the time you've had together. You hug one another and promise to return and do it all over again. You are aware that something very special has happened, a gift, and you are grateful, and you hope you can return soon.
Helping out others who are in need is a mountaintop experience. You know that you've made a difference in the life of another person when they possibly felt forgotten or ignored. Whether it be something like the Adopt a Family program, where we partner with neighbors to make sure families have presents and gifts for their children at Christmas, or helping our own members and members of the community through the Emergency Assistance Fund with medical bills, utility bills, buying someone a new set of tires, or simply paying the security deposit to someone can move them into a safe place and out of the cold or a violent situation. It is difficult to think about our brothers and sisters who are struggling, and that we can only help them so much. But when you realize that you have made a difference, even if only for the moment, you feel on top of the world. Going shopping and wrapping the presents, listening to Christmas music and eating cookies is fun. Take my word for it. It is amazing to see everybody working together to make these things happen, but it is hard to never get to meet them and see their faces. Still, you wish you could do more, and it makes you feel good, and you wish you could have this feeling forever.
Another mountaintop experience is being able to help a family grieve and celebrate their loved one's life who has died, providing them with a reception to welcome friends and family and sharing stories and memories. Sometimes it's hard because the family's loved one may also be a friend of ours and someone we loved as well. I wouldn't be totally honest if I didn't say it is a lot of hard work, and sometimes all our different personalities clash a little. But we are all there for the same reason, to serve the family and make this holy time of mourning easier and bring them some peace. When you are doing dishes, putting away food, and cleaning up, it is sometimes challenging to see the gift that you are providing. But then the family comes up and says thank you and tells you how wonderful this time was, and maybe writes you a note about how meaningful was your attention to detail and your willingness to go above and beyond their expectations. Sure, it can be hard work, both emotionally and physically, but when you realize how meaningful your work is to people, often your friends, in one of the most difficult times in their lives, well, it is an experience that fills you with purpose and joy.
Providing opportunities of fun and fellowship for our family of faith is absolutely a mountaintop experience. Sure, you worry if not enough people will show up to play bingo and that there will be enough chili entries to feed everyone, but no matter what the event and the amount of people who do show up, everyone has a great time, and at the end of the event, they're asking, when will we be doing it again? Whether it be traveling up and down the Mississippi River on the Jonathan Paddleford, or a lip sync battle and karaoke night with hot dish and jello salads. We know how to have a good time together. You look around and you see everyone smiling and laughing, our youngest children and our more gray-haired children, out together enjoying one another. And all the hard work and the anxiety is totally worth it. You feel great, not just because others are having a great time, but because all of a sudden you realize that you are having a great time as well. Of course, the boat trip comes to an end, the karaoke machine gets put away, and the chili cook-off trophy gets handed out again until the next year. But at the end of the night, you actually find yourself looking ahead to our next fun time together. Yes, we'll worry again about how many people will show up and hope there's enough food, but the good times never seem to run out.
Jesus and his disciples had a mountaintop experience. They had a chance to be together with Jesus up away from the crowds. The disciples got a vision of Jesus together with Moses and Elijah, great prophets from the past. This vision reminded them of the scriptures where they had learned about God's promises. Everything they saw and heard reminded them of something that the prophets had said about the coming of the Messiah. It was like a light bulb lit up in them. They figured it out. Jesus was the Son of God. God had chosen them to know the secret about Jesus' true identity.
The disciples were scared by this vision of Jesus glowing, but they were also excited by it. Peter wanted to make shelters so that everyone could stay there and keep talking with Moses and Elijah, those two great prophets from the past. The disciples very likely felt they didn't want to go back to the real world. Up on the mountain, everything was awesome and amazing with God.
When the disciples went down from the mountain, they knew that many other people wouldn't understand their experience. Maybe they would even think that they were crazy. It's easy to understand why the disciples didn't really want the mountaintop experience to end.
Everybody who has a mountaintop experience eventually has to come down, and that's not always as easy as it seems.
You have to leave and say goodbye to the person, your new friend, who you have been visiting.
You don't get to see the direct impact your ministry has on the people you're helping now. The smiles on their faces, the relief in their hearts.
You still have to grieve yourself, but not until you have finished washing the dishes.
You're never sure if anyone will show up the next time. Will there be enough food? Will people have any fun?
So what is the message of this story about Jesus and the disciples on the mountaintop? Why did the disciples get this great vision and then get told not to tell anyone about it? Why did the disciples feel so great in the first place? Do we have to go up on the top of a mountain to feel the presence of God?
Jesus helped the disciples to not feel so scared. He sincerely cared about their feelings and wanted them to feel good about their experience on the mountain. He cared about them, just like we care for the people we are visiting. You don't have to tell everyone about your visit and how amazing it was, how good it feels to create and build new relationships. Most likely they wouldn't understand. What's more important than making sure everyone knows what you have done is the good feeling and friendships you take back home with you. You find yourself treating other people in your life differently because of what you have learned on your mountaintop experience.
Jesus was the disciples' master, but upon the mountaintop, he treated them as equals by not keeping the secret of his true identity from them. He always treated others with dignity and not as one who was their superior. He came not to be served, but to serve. Sure, he told them not to tell anyone else, but that was because he didn't want to be treated differently, to be special, to be given special privileges, to have everyone tell him how great he was. He showed them that it is in serving others, serving those who are in deepest need, where true power is to be found, and that is true whether the rest of the world knows you have helped someone out or not, and even whether the people you are helping know that it is you who have helped them.
Jesus was kind of like a comforting presence to the disciples. He tried to gently teach them about the journey ahead of them, and that the road to Jerusalem was a path to the cross, but that he would always be with them, even to the end of time. They would have to go back down the mountain where it is tough and difficult, but they would not be alone, and promises of abundant life in the kingdom of God will never be broken. He prepares us for what is to come, what will eventually come for all of us, but that God's power is stronger than death, and there is absolutely nothing that can separate us from God's love.
Jesus was a teacher to his disciples, their rabbi. Maybe they didn't really want to learn all the things that he was trying to teach them. Maybe they didn't realize just what Jesus was trying to get at. Then they had this great experience. It was like all the things they'd been taught came together, like doing a puzzle. Do not be afraid. Do not be anxious about anything. Trust God. Other people might have struggled all their lives trying to make everything make sense, doing the numbers over and over again, comparing all the facts and statistics. But God's ways are not our ways. And Jesus let them learn the truth on their own, even though oftentimes it made no sense.
Back then they say that the people were waiting for the Messiah. Life was rough. God had promised a Savior who would bring justice and peace. The people waited and waited for God to send a new king to change the world.
It didn't seem like the disciples were waiting, though, at least not patiently. The disciples were a bunch of fishermen and peasants. They didn't sit around the temple thinking holy thoughts or anything. Peter, James, and John worked long hours, sweating and hauling loads and loads of smelly fish. They were too busy to even think about God's promises.
So maybe it was illogical for Jesus to pick disciples who really weren't waiting for the Messiah to come at all. But Jesus just came up to them and said, "Follow me." And the disciples did follow, even though they didn't exactly know why or what would happen when they did. They followed Jesus up that mountain and then back down again.
We're always busy with something. It feels like we are just going from problem to problem some days. Sometimes we don't even think to ask for help. We just figure it has to be that way. Tough luck. Jesus helped his disciples learn from him, even though they didn't necessarily deserve to be chosen. Maybe being with Jesus is like having those mountaintop experiences. Maybe it even means that Jesus is with us, helping us through the difficult times and the hard times that nobody seems to notice and for which nobody gives us any credit.
Jesus tries to help us experience goodness, kindness, humility, compassion, and generosity, even when we aren't necessarily waiting for it, looking for it, and aware of it.
Like visiting someone who is isolated and lonely and maybe wonders if anyone even remembers them anymore.
Like helping out our brothers and sisters in need, serving them even if we don't know their names, and especially even if they don't know ours.
Like providing hospitality, comfort, and peace to a grieving family so that they can share not only a meal, but more importantly, share memories as they remember and celebrate the life of a loved one. Like creating good times of fellowship and fun for all those who show up and be filled with good food, laughter, and the goodness of God.
If we can trust the promises of God and that Jesus loves us and helps us when we are way up on the mountaintop, maybe we can see that he is also with us down in the valleys.
Jesus said to them, "Do not tell anyone what has happened." It's hard to keep quiet about all the great things that happen in our lives, just like it's hard to stay silent about all the ministry that is provided in this place by our deacons. But Jesus wants us to act differently, to live differently, to change and transform this world, because that's what we're called to do, not because we want everyone to know how great we are, how hard we work.
Like calling someone you haven't seen in a while, dropping them a note, or even making time to visit them.
Like signing up to go shopping next Christmas season for the Adopt a Family program, or giving to the Emergency Assistance Fund, which you'll have an opportunity to do outside in the common after the service.
Like responding to the Wednesday email that you can help serve at memorial service, reception, or make a pan of bars. Like signing up to bring chili for the cook-off tonight, or to come and play bingo.
When you leave this service today, don't tell anyone what you saw and heard here. Just go from this place and act differently.
Because if Jesus can choose and work through a bunch of fishermen and through our board of deacons, he can certainly choose and work through you as well. Amen.